Welcome to Cursed, a bi-weekly podcast that investigates the liminal spaces, from everyday witchcraft to the haunted and the phantasmic. Hang out with us as we explore our personal experiences with the unknown and celebrate our craft.
And now, episode 9, In Search of Spirits. And now for the shout-outs for our Patreon supporters. For our Haints, we have Tori, Tamara, Rachel the Pickety Witch, Corian Lane of New World Witchery, Alyssa, May, Joanne, Aaron, Melissa D, Cindy Brannon of Keeping Her Keys, and Chris. And then for our Poltergeists, we have Randy, Temple, Alex, Faith, Luna, Rex, and Melissa S. Thank you guys for all of your support. Now, the show. All right, that's what I always say is that's good enough.
We have a sample, it's fine.
Okay, so today we're talking to our friend and co-host of Ghost Finders.
Mm-hmm. You have so many.
Oh, your titles, yeah.
Thank you.
We want to include all of those.
I would say, I would say, your friend and fellow witch, Megan Deputy. I am
That's
also the co-host of the Ghost Finders and have been for, it's coming on to 4 years now.
Nice.
Wow, and awesome. Thank you. And my day job in between all that is a makeup artist in the film industry. So I do that for lots of features, television shows, and commercials. And so, I use the craft of makeup as well as the ancient craft of witchcraft.
Nice. And you're a very busy person, so we're glad that you sat down with us. Because I haven't known you that long, but I know Cricket's known you
a little bit longer.
Yeah, for a while now. So, like I said earlier, I feel left out. I'm the only one without pink hair. But I can fall somewhere in the spectrum.
We can do that later if you want.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Okay. Well, so we wanted to talk a little bit about how you approach the show, like the Ghost Finders. And what you do, because you do a lot on there that's not typical of shows like that, because they show your rituals. You're very location specific, like you said, to what you're going for, which is perfect. It's not just this is my ritual I do every single location. You really tailor it to where you're going and using the stuff around. And I think that's really cool. And we wanted to have you on because we think you're a great representation of that. When a witch goes on paranormal investigations or to go help, it's not just for sound bites or EVPs. It's a service, like we've talked about many a time before. But we think you're a perfect representation of that. And we're so glad to see it represented by not only somebody we know, but just in a larger scale, it seems like. Because you just don't see it. And I think there's...
And I think there's something to be said about doing it in a way that is very respectful. I think that there's a lot of times that people want to go in and they just want to sage and they just want to rile things up.
That's literally what I said too.
Yeah. And you approach it as you want to come in with respect and give offerings and build a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you prepare yourself to go into that situation?
So I always say to everyone we talk to, this is exactly what we would be doing with or without cameras rolling. And I've been doing this for many years. To prepare myself, I treat it like I'm going to meet new friends. I've used this analogy before. It's like going up to a house you've never been to, knocking on the door, and who answers, you hand them a bouquet of flowers, introduce yourself, and say, I am here as a friend. I'm here for you. I'm asking nothing from you. But if you would like to tell your story, just know I have ears to listen, and I'm able to share that. I've even explained, too, when we are documenting things that, and if not just for us, if there's someone they want to reach, I was like, this is like us taking that book, your letter, and sending it out across the world. So if there's even someone that's not us that you'd like to talk to or tell something, you're more than welcome to here. And I feel like that is so much better than just opening up that stranger's door, walking into their kitchen, and
hey, who's in here?
Yeah, make me a sandwich. And if you have to be a real man ghost to shut that door, and they're like, who the hell is this?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know?
But like, and you can tell a difference in what we talked about before we hit record and what Crick and I have talked about. Just in the clips you've shown me, just in watching the show, you guys get very poignant responses. You don't just get, oh, we could backtrack and tie this to this, or it said this, wonder why it said this. You're getting answers and responses to questions. You're getting, whether you're using the voice ghost box, I'm sure there's other names, whether you've got the K2 meter going off, it's all in response to your interaction. So to us, that's legitimate communication. It's not just, let's scream at these things and see if something knocks on a wall or
and
we hear something really
shut
cool.
up.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck off. So I think
I
that's
think that's one of the reasons why, one of the phrases that's most closely associated with ghost hunting and things is get out.
Yeah.
Because I think people are coming in and being incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah.
Right.
And the ghosts are like, all right, get out.
We actually don't even use the word hunting.
Yeah, it feels...
Yeah, and it's not to disregard to anybody who does that, but like that was my stipulation to coming on the show. I told Rob that aggravation and using like ways of provoking is not something I will ever be comfortable with because to go back to your question, I prepare myself as about to make new friendships, building relationships with the others, and also interacting with the spirits that I already know, and them communicating and building that relationship with the ones at the place we are at. And that is also why all of my rituals will be slightly different and in tune to who I'm talking to. It's like making sure you have that right phone number to dial to who you're talking to. And with ritual too, I say it's almost like, you follow your recipe book, but if you know who you're baking for, like cinnamon, sprinkle a little bit of extra cinnamon in there, personalize it, pour your love into it. So all of the rituals that I've done on the show are a lot of stuff that I've created, but also poured into and adapted from other rituals that I've learned from. So they are very personal. And I honestly, years ago and stuff too, like it's very intimate for me. So me sharing this through that medium of film and with others, like that was a very big step for me because it is personal and dear to my heart.
Well, I think, and not to sidetrack too much, but we had talked about it as well with the solitary idea. There's a lot that you do as a solitary witch or in a group that's very personal. The conversations you have, the things you say and do, most of us don't feel comfortable having anybody to see that.
Right.
It's your relationship with a spirit or a deity or yourself. And for you to say, I'm going to put this out there, has a lot of connotations behind it. Is like, I want people to see what this really is. I want people to know. We talked about how we don't like it when things in this nature, shows, YouTube channels, whatever, bring in a pagan or a Wiccan or a witch and they kind of whitewash it to, well, here they're lighting a candle and they're just smudging, quotation marks, the house. Like, you can tell what you do is very thoughtful, personal, genuine, and
you're not
that
just
shines
reciting
through.
the Lord's Prayer and sprinkling holy water.
Right.
I mean,
we know that doesn't work.
Yeah.
We've seen those movies. Yeah, I think my question to follow up to Cricket's question is, when you prepare, you've got your, I guess your like the rituals that you already do and know and you tweak, but do you kind of research the place before you go? Or do you, when you get there, do you feel like this is what I need to do? This is what I should do?
I actually, and especially with Rob, sometimes we don't research places.
Yeah, we like that too.
Because,
so you're not like compromised.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, again, I'll have my usual like skeleton of what I'm prepared to do. But no, I always adapt after I'm there. And there'll be certain times where I'm like, I have to wait to do it at this time and in this place, because there's actually a lot of rituals that you don't see on the show that I've done too, because of certain stipulations. But
which I think that's good, because not everything needs to be public.
Yeah. Exactly. But I will say what I do to prepare is I always introduce myself. I always leave offerings, and then I always take some time to listen and to feel and just use that intuition that all witches have to tap into who I need to communicate with. And sometimes like doing the research and stuff is like, oh, well, this spirit is always prevalent at this location. Sometimes when I'm there, I'm like, actually, it's this little girl that is wanting to speak and talk to me. So I will adapt those things to that spirit or to that deity. I think one of the ones closest to my heart that was really impactful was the Hinsdale house. And I actually had dreams of that location before I ever arrived there.
Oh, wow.
And there was some objects that I even saw in my dreams that I saw in real life that I was like just blown away. But the second my foot hit the ground, coming out of the car even.
It's like you were being beckoned.
Yes, I definitely was. And now I know because of all of the friendships I've made there at that location. If you talk to our security guy, Mike, when we were out there in the Pines, the ritual, like there were so many entities as well as a few deities that gathered there. It is such sacred place. Like, and in the episode, you'll see actually 2 different rituals done. So I was actually outside all day. You get to see a few tiny bits of me during the day doing ritual, but I think I mentioned it in the episode.
So much more.
I carried incense all throughout the woods there. The whole day into night was spent into just giving thanks and speaking that intent and leaving gifts. Like I left some stones there. I did ceremonial wine and reinstated that. And then I finally was called and given entrance into the Pines. And it's a spot where all of the pines are dead. And there's so much happenings there. And that's because these native deities reside there.
Yeah, you can tell when you're sitting there, you can almost feel what you feel, in the sense of not only is it cold, but it's very raw. And it feels crowded because you're in the middle of the trees, but like that space just feels important. And you're not just going in and working with the house, you're working with the land overall.
Exactly.
And that's what I think they said, like, I believe it was Rob that was like, this is not tied to the house. The spirit is tied to this land. The house happens to be here.
Yeah.
But then you also have the layers of course, the house's history has what those that are tied to it and its history. But then the land is something completely different. And I think we've mentioned that before too, is whether it's your backyard or your house, there's more that's going on around you than you're aware of. But you can tap into it and you can communicate with it and you can live in harmony with it.
Precisely.
And so it could be deity, it could be non-human spirits, which we'll talk about a little bit later, because I don't think that gets enough spotlight in investigations and paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with all the previously human ones and their stories, but there's other spirits that have stories and want to communicate, and that's what we try to do as well. So I think that's really such a unique thing about you guys. And it could, like I said, we come from the same place. This is what we'd be doing without cameras.
Yes.
This is stuff we'd be doing without the podcast.
Yeah.
And
we made the podcast to share what we were doing because I think that we sort of felt like we were alone for a long time in what we were doing until we started connecting and saying, oh, I do that too.
Right.
Oh, I do that
it's
too.
It's like a validation.
Exactly.
And like a, you see the main, I guess, whether it's books or websites, things like that. But the personal experiences are where witches stop really. There's a thing I tell people, you see a lot of 101 books.
Mm-hmm.
They're great. They have a place. I still read some of them. It's harder to find those books that are, because once you get to like intermediate, advanced, it's all personal experience and
it's all
and
your
work.
own gnosis.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's important that we share what we feel led to share with each other so that you come at it from a place of not only community, but like, self-validation. You validate others. We've gotten a lot of good response about validating that. So I think you offer the same thing in a different medium.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended. But I think that's important for people to see. And non-practitioners too. That as a witch, we don't just talk to scary demons and the devil.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're on standby. But you talk to these others and it's a service and it's not just for likes or views or anything like that. It's that calling to feel like I want to help you. Like I feel like I want to help the community of living people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same on the other side.
In my heart too, when I made that covenant with myself and with the others and became a witch, like that's also that responsibility that you have, that understanding deep inside. Like it's almost so raw, words can't put it into its own place.
Yeah.
And you know that time and place when you're supposed to guide either non-magical people or other magical people.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly like you're saying, like there's been so many positive responses from people around the world that were just like, thank you. Watching that, like I always felt led to breathe onto my wine, and I never knew if that was, and this is the dangerous soundbite you hear from so many younglings, the right way to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hear from people that they're learning around, and it's like, no, that's your intuition and that intent that you're pouring, that personal way that you're doing it. That's how that magic connects, and those deities, the others, whatever spirit that you're connecting with, taps in because you're being genuine. And that's why different techniques from all over the world work in positive ways.
Yeah.
Is because those people walking down that certain path are truly connected in with what they're doing. So that's why I really support and love all of these eclectic techniques from around the world. And it's about that personal relationship with who you're working with. And I love that you guys too, because like I think that's just, you know, kind of the modern standpoint. And I say modern because, I mean, back in Ireland, we would have all of the beautiful tales of, like, fae. And there was that understanding that it's a huge Marvel universe out there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just one type of spirit or entity, and it's vast. And so, yes, that's why you have to take that quiet time to listen and intimately feel who you're working with around, and also that respect. So to go back to Hinsdale, a lot of the stuff that started to happen with the family there is because those ancients were being name called, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They were being called demons by these people who walked in, and they had failed exorcisms, and because they were insulted, if somebody came up to you and started insulting you, of course you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to knock off your coffee cup off the table because you're being rude.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Fuck
it's
this,
understandable.
fuck that,
Yeah.
I'm breaking this.
yeah, so I also too and to go back, like people need to remember, and I think that's why it's so important to study history and stuff like that too, because a lot of even what people call demons today were respected as deities. Like, we're thinking of it as something that's like malicious. It's like, no, not always. And nature has a place for everything. So they have a much of a right and a place and way to exist as you do. And that's why respect even needs to be given to negative entities as well, and you shouldn't provoke them, and they might have some justice fury for a reason. You don't know that backstory,
Right.
but you know, the goddess Astara was, nowadays a lot of people hear her all the time, but from the modern interpretation, calling her a demon. And no, she's a goddess.
Yeah.
And thus deserves that respect.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I think it's, like we've mentioned before, born out of a place of fear and probably like mainstream religions of if something moves in your house, you're less likely to, if you come from that viewpoint, to believe in ghosts, but you believe in angels and demons. And so anything that's seems to be out of place is, let's blame it on a demon. But, and that's not to say that there aren't demons out there.
Right.
But like, to think that it's just malicious.
Is that demons are not necessarily bad things. I think that it's been given a bad reputation because they've been made scapegoats.
It's literally been demonized, and I know that's where the word comes from.
Yeah.
But
I love doing little analogies and stuff too. So I think a lot of people, it's almost like, so witches, we lived in the woods. We understand the birds, the forest, and the grizzly bears that reside there. And we know how to interact with all of the creatures. And if a grizzly comes up to us, we know what to do and what not to do. Now, to somebody who is halfway around the world, comes to the forest, never ever heard of a bear in their entire life. Like, let's say like a young kid, and first comes to face, they're like, this is a bona fide monster. And they might not understand what is right to do in that situation, and they might get hurt.
Right.
But if you think about it, that would be like saying, okay, grizzlies hurt some people. We need to get rid of all the grizzlies out in the forest. No, as witches, we love them too. And they have a place, and it's all a part of nature.
Yeah, even all
Just
the negative
like,
spirits
Yes,
have a place.
yeah.
And I love the analogy you just used too, because I mean, even now as we're finally taking our ecology seriously, we've noticed differences. There was a study that was done in Yellowstone where they brought in other wolves, and they noticed how it balanced and even changed the course of the river, bringing those other animals in, introducing those other wolves. You know, it's so important to have that balance.
Right.
And everything has that little function.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, that, like, it goes through the spirit. And I think what we're basically saying is, it's the same thing with people. Like, you're stereotyping.
Exactly.
By assuming something's malicious, by assuming that demons, because, again, coming from someone who works with a daemon, is where the name comes from, is they were earth spirits in certain shapes or form. They weren't human. They weren't deity. They were in between. And they were muses. They brought knowledge. And so that's why they were scary to an organized religion who sought control, was because we don't want you interacting with things that might tell you. I mean, these things have been around before they had names.
Exactly.
And so to come into a place and have respect for not just things you might know a name of, like a person that passed here, or, oh, so-and-so's over here, but to listen and feel that there is ancient, and that's going to be everywhere you go. And whether it's prevalent or not, they'll let you know. You know, you have to, it's just walking with respect and knowing there's a lot that you might not know or see, but you can feel and honor, whether or not they want to do anything with you. Like we talked about on our first trip as a cursed group with our crew and coven. You talked to, or reached out to the conjure. There was a guy there who was known as a conjure man. He said he was there, and when you asked if he wanted to talk, he said no. And we said thank you, and we walked away.
Yeah.
And like, like you said, you have to respect that. It's if you were trying to talk to somebody and they didn't want to talk to you, you wouldn't force yourself to keep talking. If you did, you're like, oh my God, this person is so annoying.
Exactly.
But just, it's treating them like you would friends and other people. And that goes the same with animal spirits, plant spirits. Treat them like they were not your pet. But you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't just go up and start, like, yelling at an animal.
Exactly.
Or try to provoke an animal. And then be shocked when it's like, well, this is a really aggressive spirit. Well, you look how you came in. I would fucking be like, get the fuck out.
Offended.
I almost approach spirits in the way that I approach strange cats.
Yes.
Where I sort of, acknowledge their existence, but then sort of like give them space and allow them to come to me and come investigate. And, if they come up to me, I'll stick out my hand and let them smell me so that they know who I am, they know what I'm about.
Right.
And then they can take it from there.
And you can leave them some food.
Yeah.
And the more friendships that you build with other cats. So, and that's what I'd say.
Then you're the cat lady.
Yes. And then they smell that on you. And spirits
and then
are like that.
for Satan.
Exactly. Yes. She's drinking out of one of my mugs that says just that, and you're adorable, and I love you.
I love it.
Who else are you going to pet him for?
Exactly. I mean, yeah. So I think that's important too. And the more you do that work, so that's the thing that you'll even hear. We have that responsibility, and we are also messengers, and we do that work for them. And that is given in tandem. So a lot of the spirits that I've already made friends with are communicating to the ones that we're interacting with for the first time. Yeah. And that's what makes it easier as you go along and build that rapport and you have that understanding. And also for the apprehensive, those friendships that you've built with these entities also protect you from the ones that might...
Exactly.
Yes.
Whether it's a familiar or like that. I think it's like going to a party.
Yeah.
And you might know the host. You don't know anybody else. And they introduce you. And it's like, well, they vouch for you. They're cool. So I think it's, again, networking, like we said. But you can tell us a little bit about how you've made connections and associations and friendships with not just the spirits at a location, but that will continue to help and follow you. Yeah.
And you'll hear me say constantly how I do not have fear in this place. And then I like to translate it too. Like when I say that too, because fear is toxic and sometimes negative entities try and provoke that from you. And to those who have a Christian perspective, that's also to say like, when you look down and you see you're walking on water and you doubt yourself, that's when you're going to start to sink. So when you let that fear start to come inside you, you're doubting your friendships. Yeah. You're doubting like your backup. So when I'm saying that too, I'm saying, no, I trust in the others around me. I know where I stand. And that's like, quote unquote, like keeping my faith in what I'm doing. Yeah. And that's that protection because you'll see in some episodes too, when we have some other crew members that like start to freak out, I'll be like, calm down, because that's going to work against that magics and that rapport. And it also puts a wall up against who we're trying to communicate with that doesn't want any fear to be present and wants that communication and that story to be told. That's when stuff gets fuzzy. And I feel like to even non-magical paranormal investigators, like when that starts to happen, that's when they'll start to struggle with capturing things. And that's because, and you can find this in all different cultures. I love the Japanese for that reason because they'll talk about emotions staining a place, either good or bad. And I think that as a witch, we can pick up on that very easily. And that also ties in with the land. And like you guys were talking about Asheville and stuff before, there's so much quartz in the earth there. It's not just one thing, my friends. There's magic, there's science, there's like feelings, it's all come into this beautiful, again I say, Marvel universe. There are different issues of comics about certain characters.
There's multiverses.
Yes!
It's gonna get confusing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But you have to stay in your experience and, like you said, trust in those alliances.
Yes.
There's a lot of places where if I didn't have my familiar
Mhm.
or have the connection with deity and other things, I would be like, I'm an idiot for going in here.
Right.
Because some shit's gonna happen. But
Yeah.
I know that there's no way that it's gonna come, affect me.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. They trust you
Yeah.
and the work you do for them and what you do to help them. This isn't, again, like we said, this isn't a one-sided friendship, partnership. You know how those go.
Yeah.
If you have a friend that's always asking and you're doing services for, and then when it's time for you to need help, they're nowhere to be found. Like, that's not going to be a solid friendship. You're not going to trust them.
Yep.
Right.
And
Start singing Joan Jett,
right.
fake friends.
Yeah. And it's not even just like, okay, well, you leave offerings or you do this and you respect. Like, there's other ways to do it. Like you said, being that messenger if they want to get something across. Because you have to think some of these spirits, especially the human ones that have passed, what are the chances that the majority are not going to be pagans or witches.
Right.
And yet that goes out the window because you're a beacon for them and you're a lifeline and so to speak. But you're that person that is there to help. And it doesn't matter what label you give yourself or society, they see through all that. And so that's what I said is like, as a witch, it's a label that has had negative connotations. It's been reclaimed and there's a power behind it, but yet the title's not where that power comes from. It's you. And
exactly.
Some of these things, especially if they don't even speak a language that we understand, don't know, oh, this is a witch, but they see your actions and your energy and they feel what you do. So that's why I think you guys get such good responses, because you approach it differently than say, well, we want to go into a place and we want to set up equipment and we hope to record something. We know a name. Let's try to talk to this. That can work. But I think the minute you and your crew walk in, your intent is glaring and these things are like, okay, great. You're here. They respect us. And I think that works with so many things, not just paranormal investigation, but nature and other phenomenon like the Brown Mountain Lights. You'll hear, well, you've already heard it now by the time this comes out. But that's the thing is, it's that like harmony about working with stuff. And so I think that's why you get such good responses. And I love how in the show, it's not like anybody gets too freaked out, but like if the voice box says something or you hear an audible noise, everybody's kind of like, what was that? And you're just like, yep, because you're already in a different mindset, kind of. Like, I mean, like, yep, that's a person. I'm just keeping my same, composure. I don't react the same. I'm not like, because sometimes it can be very scary.
Yeah.
But, and I love it. It's like, yep. And it'll say your name or it'll say a word that you just said or answer a question and you're just like, thank you. And you just move along because it's a response and it's not like, oh my God, did we get that? Did we get that? I hope we got that. Because that's what you want to be.
Right.
Because it's still, I don't want to say entertainment, but it's a cool feeling because everybody's interested in the paranormal. And that validation we talked about, whether it's personal feeling or experience, or you catch it on camera or a voice recording, it's validation that we all want to know. And I think it goes down to, is there life after death or is there all this other stuff? And so, yeah, you get that like giddy reaction. You geek out about it, but you're there for a purpose and you're just like, yes, I hear you. And I think you do good work with, some of those spirits that might feel trapped or oppressed by another entity that they were in life. I mean, to see you work with that and release it and be this guardian and like this wall of enough, like that is so important. Thank you. We love it.
Thank
you. You are breaking down all of the negative stereotypes.
Yes.
In paranormal investigation. And I cannot tell you.
Oh, that means so much to you guys.
Because I do think for a long time with certain shows and in the early days, it was easy to, because nobody had seen it like that before. People were interested. It was easy to tweak things, or, you know, some things were falsified. And so I think there was a stigma that came like, oh, we're kind of skeptical too, but you're like, okay, well, I don't believe this. There's no way that could happen. But then, you know, it's kind of like, you can tell you'd be doing this without the cameras rolling. You're not doing it you're recording it, and it's for like informational purposes. You're not doing it for any other genuine reason.
Right.
And I think that shines through, like we keep repeating, but it is very important. And that's why we wanted to have you on, because you don't see it. And like we said, you might see the pagan or the token Wiccan, and they might have a pinnacle on, and they might say, okay, this house is clean.
Or even worse, you get the Reiki healer in there, and it's like, no.
Yeah. But, yeah, and it's just, and like I said, you don't shy away from it. Like, when the credits come on, it's like, Megan Deputy, witch. Yeah. And it's like, own it. Yeah. Because that's what I am. And people might say, like, oh, I want to like this show, but there's a witch in here. Witches, but then if you watch it and you're like, oh, I see what she's doing and why she's doing it. Some of it might look a little foreign and scary because people aren't exposed to these rituals like this. Yeah. And so you don't whitewash it. And I think you're a good representation of all of it. And,
Thank you.
So with that being said, we do want to talk about like some of the rituals that you've done. Yes. The one you showed me where you're on all fours, you're putting dirt in your mouth. Like I connected with that because I'm like, that is real shit.
Thank you.
You don't have to eat dirt, but you can. You can eat it.
Exactly. It needs to be adapted to what you're doing, and to say like, it's because I've grown up in the forest all my life. I've interacted with
feral.
Yeah, like that's why there's no fear present. I know where I am in the woods and who I'm talking to and what I'm working with, and I'm still learning.
What's got your back too.
Yes, yeah. And so thank you so much. Wow. So yeah, each ritual is very personal. And the ritual you're talking about at Greystone on that episode. So Greystone is so amazing. They actually featured it. It's now on one of the most haunted places in America.
Oh,
nice.
Wow. And Heather, who
Where's
resides
it located?
There, it's in New York.
Okay.
And oh my goodness, the house is filled with so many different kinds of spirits, and she's a medium herself. Wonderful. That's why she protects it and gives it all the love that she needs. We immediately connected with one another, and she was like, you are the oldest young person I've ever met. And I was like, that goes with what I feel inside. I'm a very old soul. Yes. So the earth there is so powerful, just like Hinsdale. And when I came to Greystone, the one that really popped up to me was the old one. He was there for sure. And I went out into the middle of the field because, again, like, it wasn't just the house there. It was the land that it resided on. And I actually have some sacred brick dust that's from all around the United States and some of Europe, all blended together. Wow. And you can see from a bit from ritual, I took some of the tree branches that had fallen from the forest, created a physical circle. I had my horn to honor the old one. The pipe you see me smoking, I'm smoking mugwort.
I really like that pipe.
Thank you. So ceremonially, I was tapping into, and I was amplifying what was there for myself to tap into that. So in that ritual, I'm also speaking in witch's tongue too. So I tread my circle. I say what I need to say to the old one with so much love in witch's tongue. And I'm saying these words too. And some of the words I said are coming like to me from the spot because I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
And I took my sacred brick dust. I mixed it with the earth, and I'm talking to the old one, and I feel in my mind's eye, I see him at the edge of the trees, and he's watching me, and I'm talking to him. And you hear me in ritual say a lot, I am your daughter, I am your lover, I am your colleague, like, because in the past rites I've done with him, that's what he's told me. So that's the rapport that I have with him. And he sat,
it's a knowing.
Yeah, and he sat and he watched me, and he was showing me some of the things in my mind of the different entities inside the house. And then I knew, like, that's why I took it into myself, because we were having a very intimate moment, me and the old one. And again, that's very, like, whoa, sharing that with people
is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And so I'm very, very thankful for a lot of the positive responses I've gotten.
But it's
back.
A very beautiful ritual. And I think that's what we're saying is some of it might have been like the bones of what you wanted to do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But yet, and we mentioned it in the Hecate episode, if you feel compelled to do something in ritual, like putting earth in your mouth or grabbing this stick or
breathing on a goblet of wine.
Yes.
Breathing on... Then there's a reason. The witch's biggest asset is the intuition.
Yes.
You wouldn't be a witch without your intuition. And to follow that, it's not only from the deepest pits of your soul, but it's also from the spirits around you, the things around you. Like, I'm sure that connection you had with the old one in that time, there was a sharing of information. And that's why you felt compelled to do this. And for you to say, well, I can't do that. Like, why would you? You would just do it.
Right.
And for you to share something like that intimate and that personal is not only important, but it's also very, like, brave because, again, even in the witch community, there's like, what the fuck is she doing?
Oh, yeah. There's some negative responses, too. There's a lot of people...
But at the end of the day, did it change your outlook on anything? No. Because you're sound in that relationship and your calling. And that's a huge point of how we act and practice, and what we like to tell people is... You're not invalid because you didn't read it in a book or somebody says that's not the right way. There's no right or wrong way. There's the witch's way and you're the witch and it's your way.
Exactly.
And so, that's just, we can't get that enough across because I feel like if people knew that and they jumped in with it and they were like, I've always wanted to do that. I didn't know why, but I'm just going to do it. Like, you will see so much change with that harmony and that magical working and stuff. Like that, I forget where you guys were at, because I'm bad with names.
You're fine.
But you did the burial with the house that had burned.
Palmyra.
Yeah.
That was intense.
Like, I loved watching you go.
That was one of my favorite rituals that I've seen you do.
Thank you.
And it was like, okay.
Because it was, I have standing puddles in my eyes thinking about it right now, because it was beautiful.
But you went out and did what every witch does. You were like, all right, I got the backpack on. Let's go out and get some stuff. And you're like, oh, look, I got these sticks. And, like, that's what we do. We forage. And you're like, the little mushroom, you're like, I'm going to borrow this. And it's like, that's what we do. Yes. And so it was cool to see that. But then you said it was a burial ritual. Is that what you called it?
Yeah. And then so the ashes of the house before, that is where that was all gathered. So... I've had some really in-depth burial rituals in the past on some episodes, but you basically put yourself into the earth and you spiritually, like, sink down into it, almost like being buried, and you commune with that. Palmyra was so heavy, and how I explained it, it was like this vast blanket that covers you. That's what I felt, and and
you're like, it just lays over everything, and there's like little, because like in the Hecate episode, like when we said just go bury yourself, this is, you don't have to dig a hole, but like you can do this. And I think it's important, not just from a grounding, but to connect and become one with, because your physical body might be laying on the dirt, but you're fucking in it.
And that's what those conduits were, and why I knew I needed to take from the earth that was there to amplify, to tap in. I think I even was like, I need to take a blood sample.
Yeah, you did say that. And I'm just going to taste it and let you know what I taste.
Exactly. And another analogy with ritual, I feel like you are starting a dance and you play the music and you are dancing with yourself at first. And then whoever you're communicating with comes in and joins you in the dance. And then they start to lead you. Mm-hmm. And then it's that beautiful, like, you
waltz
guys,
or whatever.
and it adapts.
And it's unspoken between the two of you, and you just linger off of each other's energy and both just ebb and flow together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How many times do you do ritual and you sit there and you think, I want all these like fancy, pretty words, but you just project and then you receive, and that's all it can have to be at times. I mean, you say certain things with intent, but other times, like, it from somebody else, like you said, it might not look like much.
Right.
And I believe you said that in one of the episodes. What you're seeing me do might not look like much, but what I'm feeling is so much more than you can ever see. And that's why you can't ignore that. If you felt something here, you can take your word for it. But for yourself and for others, it's cool to see an apparition move across like that clip you showed me, or hear an EVP. The technology is really helpful to confirm it. But at the end of the day, the only equipment you need is yourself to interact with these things.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That was one of the first pieces of investigation advice that I was given. It was given to me by one of the lead investigators when I was at St. Albans in Radford, Virginia. And he said, I don't come in here with any equipment, especially when I come in here the first time. Right. Because I just want to listen and just sit in the dark and just be with the house. And this is someone who, as far as I know, is not a practicing witch or pagan. And even his style of Muggle investigation is still along those same lines. You know? That is a piece of advice that I always carry with me. That and your advice to always go in without fear.
Yes.
And then
yeah, you don't have to be the witch to do this. Like, you can be connected and harmonious with these things and not be a practicing witch.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a knowing.
Yeah.
And it's a respect.
Yeah. And the last piece of advice that I was given was from Rachel Marie Booth, who I got to investigate with. And she said, you know, this is when I was first starting to get into using my abilities on purpose instead of saying, oh my God, I don't want this.
You're just reacting. And now you're actually pursuing.
Yes. And she said, you know, and I was kind of explaining how I feel and stuff like that. And she's like, you're on the right path and don't worry about putting words to it. Don't worry about labeling it, because when you label yourself as, you know, I'm this kind of medium, you completely cut yourself off and you put yourself in a box and you limit your potential.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Don't box yourself in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Bury yourself, but don't box yourself.
Yes.
That's right. Because even when you bury yourself, you can grow roots.
Now, you mentioned this spirit, because we wanted to talk more about the non-human ones you can come in contact with as well. And how there's more out there and they're easily found, probably in more abundance than you will find human spirits.
Yes, definitely.
So tell us,
so one of the most, I would say, how would you say, my dear friend, my dear friend, I went to one of my favorite graveyards for ritual with a fellow witch, and they introduced me to the land there and the spirits that reside, and I left an offering to the Grimm that watches over the graveyard there. And to us witches, we know that the Grimm, they're like protectors of us, especially during our magical workings. That black dog spirit, so which it's not a scary thing. It's they're friends of ours,
so. Right? Especially with us too, because they're so closely associated with Hecate.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The hounds are always announcing her presence.
Yeah.
They're in her hoard. And actually, I think that's tied a lot to the really cool idea of, I say cool, but when you hear these myths of like graveyards having demon dogs, and I use quotations, which we want to, me and my wife are going to go on a trip this weekend, and we were looking at different things to do, like, oh, by the way, if we're up there, let's check this out. And there's, I forget the name of the road. We'll if we have some cool stuff, we'll tell Cricket about it. We'll have an episode with it. And but there's like a known demon dog that roams that graveyard, and I think like it has to be tied with this idea of the Grimm and protectors and guardians, whether it's seen from Hecateans as being one of her hounds, or all this and that, or like even the werewolf idea of all that. So
exactly, and I had my fellow witch witness this, but as soon as I introduced myself, gave thanks, and left that offering, as soon as I ended my sentence, a single howl came from the direction that my fellow witch knew that they resided in.
Oh, wow.
And there was no other barks. There was no other howls. It was just one single howl after that. And I knew I had made that connection with them. And then that night we did, see, this is the stuff you don't see.
Right.
In the
what
episode.
You're not seeing right now is
right.
One of your cats is totally judging you right now.
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I made a friend with a dog. Okay.
Yes. But later that night in that same graveyard, I did a very in-depth burial ritual. So I had a mirror bringing the moon in. I had the life and death candle and a death shroud, and in
oh my
a
God.
spot in the
Hold on,
graveyard.
let me write this down.
I am more than happy to share these things, and I learned a few things from Michelle Bellinger on that particular burial ritual. So I went into ritual and then put the death shroud on and was there for 3 hours, my friends.
Wow.
And when I finally emerged, that's the understanding, and that's the relationship and the time it took to build with this entity. Now, I tell you all this to lead you into what we captured on the Connect camera. And this is at a different location, and we are at another graveyard. And I go into ritual, and the Ghost Finders and our team, we've been just like taking different bits of technology and seeing how it coincides with what I'm doing ritual wise. So this particular time was the first time we ever set up a Connect camera.
See, I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah. And I tell my crew, I'm like, all right, so this is where I'm going to put my circle. You guys need to actually stand way back. Nobody come in at this time. So this is just me. The Connect camera is set up, and it's about probably 20 minutes in. I had cast my circle, and I'm doing ritual, spoken witch's tongue, and the Connect cam picks up a 4-legged entity.
Oh.
It just appeared in the middle of the circle.
Fuck.
And then starts walking the circle with me, and I felt them, and I knew it was the Grimm at that particular graveyard. And the reason why it was there is because I introduced myself, and I knew because I already had that deep, intimate relationship with the one at the personal graveyard I go to for deep ritual. And so my team is like, they're saying nothing to not like be rude, and they're just like freaking out at seeing this on the Connect. But what really makes it amazing, my friends, is you see me acknowledge it without seeing, and then get down on all fours as well and walk the circle with it.
And you have this or no? We can't see it.
I don't have it handy yet, but it has been released when we were at Silicon Valley Comic-Con as a clip.
Oh, okay, so this is going to come out.
Oh, yeah, this is going to come out.
I was like, I mean, the listeners don't need to see it, but we do.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just kidding. But I will
share that with you. And it's pretty awesome, and you see it all there. And this is another thing that's like, we're a little baby bat production and doing things with love. So we have some people who are like, oh man, I wish you had like so much more lighting and like closer tight shots of you in ritual. And it's like, well, we only have like 1 or 2 cameras,
right.
And then
I'm
respecting the magics that we're doing. So the ritual you saw at Greystone, we had drones and different things. So like the camera is filming without a person actually like being there. So it's not interrupting those magics. So you'll get that. But we do have these beautiful clips, and it's like,
Well, not just that, but I mean, it's not, I think what adds to the fact that you guys seem and feel genuine is this isn't made for TV network, like big production where somebody is telling you what and where to put stuff and what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're just recording what you're already going to do.
Exactly.
And I think that's what like really hits home.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we're not going to like share anything until it comes out, but I'm so excited that that is going to be released.
Yeah.
Because that's so important from a paranormal standpoint, from a like ritual standpoint. Like how many times have we witches felt a presence or many when we do ritual and we acknowledge exactly where it's at, but to add that little layer of like, you see this doing it alongside you just adds that other sense of validation. We don't need it, but it's nice to see and it's beautiful to see. And it's like that one clip you showed where there's that apparition and nobody sees it with the naked eye because it's dark. It's pitch black. It's caught on a night vision camera, but the whole time Rob acknowledges exactly where it is and when it's there. And that's what we try to, like, just because you feel something and you don't have a way to validate it doesn't mean if you feel that hair stand up on the back of your neck or you feel that cold, like there is something there, whether it speaks to you or you see it or not. Some people can see apparitions, and I think it depends too on the energy. Like I said, you're giving energy and you're building energy with ritual and your demeanor, and that's what I think allows these things to come through too. As opposed to somebody who's not an energy worker or doesn't know how to do that. I mean, they still might get a reaction, but that helps too, is to build that energy through ritual. Not only respect, but allowing them, it's offering them a hand because it takes a lot. It takes a lot. It's not, oh, why won't this ghost just appear to me? Through whatever means that we don't understand, what it does seem to be is all energy work, and it seems to be difficult to conjure that. I mean, how many times, especially with us, do you feel like you just don't have the energy levels? Or I've had instances where my familiar has wanted to do work with a friend, and he's come over, and he was fucking ready to go. He's like, we're going to divinate. Ava's going to do this for me, and Ava's going to do that. And channeling me, she opens the door and he immediately has to lay down and feels like he's going to pass out. And he was like, did she suck my energy? And it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to. It's like a vacuum, but so there's ways to, like we talked to Brown Mountain with Tori and you and how you felt like
someone was borrowing energy from us.
Right. And like Tori said, I might have been a little bit too free with giving it and not keeping enough for me. But we got experiences with that. And so you do need to leave some for yourself. You do need to figure out how to
practice.
It does take practice. And that's why I think it's good if it's something that you would like to do for your companions on the other side, is to try to, like, you know, build a little ball of energy or picture it so that you're sharing, because there's times where mine's given me a shit ton of energy. And so I just, like I said, I think that's another reason you guys or you especially get such good results. And it helps that, you know, you have people on the team that are mediums and, same thing with us. But like we said, we like to go in groups because Cricket is very sensitive to a certain thing. My wife, Tori, is such an empath. And then I don't necessarily experience it the same way, but I do have that mediator of like my Damon familiar Ava, who is like, there's somebody out there. Hold on, let me go check them out. And we've been camping, and one time we camped at the battlegrounds, and she was out, and we were doing all this work, and I walked outside down a little trail to use the bathroom, and it's like, I could feel it, and she's like, there's somebody right there. And, I mean, it was part of the, like, Civil War or Battle of wherever. So there was no telling. It was probably a soldier. It could have been but I didn't see her, like, I felt it, but she was the one relaying the stuff. And so everybody has a very valid ability and way to experience. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you want to attempt this, or you feel like you've been talking to something, or you want to reach out, you might not have the technology to validate it, but use your senses, and like you keep
Yeah.
saying, just listen.
Yeah.
Just listen.
And, I think we've talked about this before. It's just like a muscle. The more you use it,
Exactly.
the better it gets.
Literally said that earlier. It's like,
I
you
say
have
the
to
same.
work it.
Yeah. There's a
Work
great
it.
article that Cindy, our lovely Cindy, just
Cindy
released,
Brennan.
I think today, where she talks about the witch's compass. And she talks about your body as a compass.
It totally is.
And you have to make sure you find your north first. You have to learn how to use that tool. And sometimes it takes a little practice, and things will start. You'll notice small things first, like your like ringing in your ears.
Yes.
Or your hair on your arms starting to stand up.
The dizziness is a big one.
Dizziness is a
Yeah,
big
dizziness.
one.
Because
Yeah.
it's almost like, I mean, you talk about electromagnetic fields and places like vortexes, which we had checked out the vortex. So we might do it too while we're going to the Demon Dog. But it makes you feel dizzy because your equilibrium is thrown off. And I think you can feel the change in the atmosphere. Like you've said in the episodes as well. Like, if it feels, and I've felt it, I've had other people tell me they felt it, where you go into a place and a section feels dark, almost like impenetrable.
Heavy.
And you'll get a sense if it feels like you don't need to go over there. Don't go over there.
Right.
Yeah.
For your sake, for everybody else's, like, just, okay,
Just
I
like
see you back there.
When we were at
Rosedale.
Yes, thank you.
And we were in
name
the
of place left me.
gardens.
Yes, and we were in the gardens, and there was that area there towards the back, and we sort of felt a pull there, but we sort of hit that wall, and we're like, would you like us to come and speak with you? And we all kind of got that feeling of, no, I'd like you to go away.
And then it
So we
retreated.
left.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it retreated, and we went the opposite way. We're like,
Yeah.
okay.
What you're doing it right. You're like respecting the forest that you're in and who you're communicating with. That is so, so important. And yeah, to know the witch's compass inside yourself. So what, because that's been the one thing with some of the muggles. We've even, just at Belle Grove Plantation, we had groups of fans actually investigate with us.
Oh, wow.
And when I started saying I'm giving some of my energy, there was like some people that were like, whoa! Oh no! Because I feel like a modern condentation, or what some muggles would automatically assume and visualize, is opening up to possession. And
That's a whole different way to do
That's
it.
a whole nother ball game.
There's
and
a whole different set of doors you have to open for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we'll tell you how.
Exactly. And then again, like there's different giving energy. And that's why, again, to do the scientific like explanation, that's sometimes why you'll get battery drains on tech. Because that entity is trying to draw energy. And when I'm working with that, like you're saying, you have to find your north. I explain it like plugging into that circuit. So you have to have those magics flow through you as well as out of you, because you can get burned out by not letting it flow through you.
Yeah.
As well as replenish. So after you find your north and you know you're in a good place to open up that, because I'll get a lot of people that ask me, it's like, oh my gosh, how do you sleep at night after interacting? And I was like, you don't understand. I sleep so much more soundly and
You have to,
protected
like you
and
said, you have to be
now.
like
Because-
you have to be a conductor.
Yes.
If you're just taking the shock, it's not helpful. And if you're just sending out a shock, you have to insert yourself into that flow of energy.
Right. And it takes practice to do it right. And then
meditation, ritual,
Yeah.
and just saying, this is my intent and what I'm here to do. The more you do that, like, to bring it back around to talking about making friends and groups, it's like, because you had made that connection and such a personal and deep one with that Grimm at the one, that's why it's like you become marked as a friend, an ally, and it's like, okay, we know why you're here, what you're doing, and do it.
Right. Yeah. And to give the listeners a little bit more of a visual of the connect and why it was so extraordinary is because the four-legged creature was larger than a human, and its hind legs were taller than its front legs. And it actually had a tail.
Oh, I have chills.
So some people are like, okay, the connect is tweaking out, and sometimes when it's resetting, it will do that as a humanoid.
Yeah.
But never with a tail and the way it was described.
I would say it probably resets, but then it jumps around.
It does. So the fact that it fully walked with me, we acknowledged
and it's like it was
each other.
helping you.
Yes, it definitely was. Because that ritual was honoring that specific person that took care of the orphanage and the land there, and he was buried there. So it was honoring that human
and it's like,
spirit.
And they knew that, and it knew that, and it was like, I know why you're here. I'm going to help you do this. And that's the whole thing we talk about with networking.
Right.
So it's so cool that you were able to catch that, because for us, we're going to accept it as the truth when you tell us. But for outsiders or people who don't, or even people that do practice, it just shows that validation and that like confirmation of, yes, there was something walking with me. This is why I did it. And you're reacting, and there's at no point somebody saying there's something crawling around with you. You didn't need them to.
Exactly.
And when we say muggles, because we
say it with love,
we
but
said,
just non-magic,
but non-magical,
humans.
and people who who might not know, and like obviously we love our muggles that listen as well. It's just God, we see it as a non-magical. I know sometimes it might sound derogatory, but we don't mean it that way. We're not like, oh God, these non-practicers. I mean, that's what we want to try to convey and do, is to not just validation for witches, but shine a light on like the legit practices, to try to cut through those stereotypes or those biases or the bigotry in. Because I think, what's the famous thing where it's like, you fear what you don't know, and you don't know what you fear, because you have to take that leap, and it works on both sides. So that's why we do what we do. That's why you do what you do. And I think that kind of what we said earlier is that there's so much focus on the human things, but there's so much that are what we would call non-human or humanoid, or that are just as much around and just as helpful. So it's so cool to hear that you had a Grimm connection, and then one to like kind of help and join in your ritual. That's beautiful.
Thank you. It was one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Like, that's like these connections and stuff. That's the work I'm putting in. That's the love that I'm showcasing. Like, that's why I'm doing it, as well as for those trying to make those connections. I feel that responsibility to pass that on, and those teachings. I never expected to be where I am. I honestly, like I said, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and just being out of the broom closet on this level, I'm so thankful.
It's a big jump. It's like,
it is.
Not only for your small group, but to not even like, that's what we felt with the podcast too, is to not even take baby steps. Like, you're going to see me crawling around on all fours. You're going to see me eating dirt. And it's like, it's a shock, but it is what it is. It's genuine. It's what the reality of a lot of practitioners, know to be true. So I think it's important not to try to whitewash it or sanitize it as a safe and quiet thing. Like, everything has its purpose, and it's good to see, to shine that light for practicers and non-practicers. That this has a purpose. It's not just, it might look scary if you don't know, but this is why we're doing it. And hopefully that takes some of the stigma out of that, interaction with the other side.
For sure.
It's not all conjuring demons on Ouija boards.
Although that's fun too.
Yeah, that is fun.
Just ask Rachel.
Right. So now when you when you talked about that, what were you saying when I first got here about the deity thing?
That's yes, I was actually going to segue into that. I was like, I have a treat that I want to share.
I just did a hard
with you guys.
segue.
Yeah, no, I love it, because I was like, I want to make sure to give this to you guys, and Cricket's actually already heard this story.
I have.
Yeah.
It's oh my God.
It must be good. She's crying.
Oh,
already.
And this is something I would love to share, because, again, my listeners that, my little witchlings and muggles alike, like, it's those moments where you are just truly connecting, and those quiet times, like that, especially that we keep telling about, that you might not even see on the show. So this was a a beautiful, intimate encounter with a deity. And I will not name the deity, but I will describe them in perfect detail as best I can and tell you the amazing reveal and validation too that I've felt in so many different levels. So I have been working more so and strengthening those muscles. And I will say too that sometimes you don't choose who you work with, they choose you.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And on the dreamscape, I was in the pines, and what's so cool is this was before Hinsdale, my friends.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this was way before Hinsdale.
Oh, wow.
And I was in this beautiful moonlit forest with pines that were so large, but where I was, there was no sound. It was devoid of sound. And the moonlight was this beautiful navy blue. It was otherworldly. And as tall as the pines, I see something moving through, and it glistens, and it's gray fur that shines like blinding silver as it moves through. And then I see their face, and it's this, such tranquility and peace. They had multiple horns. It was a goat with 6 eyes and a neck that was as tall as the trees. And we shared this look at each other. And again, there was no sound. And then it passed by a pine and transformed into the most beautiful androgynous being I've ever seen. And they wore, you know how the water reflects and dances like moonlight, and it like sparkles in that way. So it, on their skin, that like dancing of light on water was on them. And I came closer, and we spoke without speaking, and they whispered into my ear a language I couldn't understand. But I didn't hear it with my ears. I heard it inside my head. And over time, that translation has been released to me in snippets at different workings in different times and different ritual. But what's so cool is I didn't understand the words in that time, but I felt it and knew it. And the more work I do, the more I understand what they were telling me, and that beautiful intimate relationship like that we have. And what's amazing that Cricket knows is I was describing this to a fellow witch of ours, Hedera Binewood. And Cricket, I think, is the one that was like, Hedera, did you show her the book? And I was like, what book? But another witch had drawn the same entity in even exact detail and color scheme, and even the world that I had described. And I've never met this witch at all. And this is something that I haven't seen before. And like, I don't know, but the whole devoid of sound and stuff was so beautiful and just amazing. But I felt that deity at different times. And that was a friendship that was built, and they came to me. I didn't come to them.
Well, I think that's kind of similar. Hedera's the one that we had just had on for Hecate episodes. And then, like what Cricket and I have said, the way we've experienced Hecate before is not written in any books that we've seen.
Right.
But you can share it, and it's like that oh shit moment. Like, I already knew it was real and valid, but then to know, it just deepens that feeling. And I think people, I'm guilty of it too, expect to hear spoken word and language. That's how we communicate
Mm-hmm.
for people who can speak and listen. But that's not how these things communicate.
Right.
Now, sometimes they can, but I liken it to whether it's from Ava or Hecate or something in a place. It's like a downloading,
Mm-hmm.
and the information's there, the file's there. You might not know what is all in it, but it will slowly reveal itself, or it'll pop up when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like, okay, I will have a vision or this dream with my familiar or that involves Hecate. And then it's like I wake up and I'm like, I know that shit was given to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I don't know is any of it. But then something will happen and it's like, that was part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And call it like prophecy, a vision. Some of it is, some of it isn't. Some of it's just knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's dream work.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
it can come in meditation, it can come in dreams, or visions or flashes, but so much of what I hear from my familiar, and probably what you both hear from outward spirits and deity and as well, is not, although there are times where I've heard it in my ear, like whisper next to me, but it's thoughts, but you know it's not yours. It just is there, and it happens, and it's so fast, and it's like, whoa. And visuals, like you might not hallucinate it with your naked eye, but an image pops in your head.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that I think people experience and don't, because it took me a while to give myself credit for it, but these are messages from deity, spirits, entities. So don't ignore those. If it feels like it's a message, it probably is. And it's okay if you don't understand it right away.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we said, just because you're like, what's happening? It'll unfold itself, and there's a reason for it. And like, we work with things and they work with us, and there doesn't need to be languages we know it's spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
a lot
so
of times there's no language spoken to
it's
me.
feelings, it's
Exactly.
emotion.
It's just feeling and emotion and unknowing with a capital K.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think people, because again, I was there, expect it to be, if you walked up to me and just stared at me, I would have no idea what you were doing. But if you talk to me or write it down, then I would know. Or if you showed me something, I would know. But that's how we interact with each other. That's not necessarily how those things are going to interact with us. Or, I mean, you have to think too, like, we're used to English, and people listen to this are certainly other languages as well, but that doesn't mean these things speak in that language.
Exactly.
Right.
And time has a different meaning for them too.
Oh,
Yes.
for sure.
And that's why I think it's so important for us to keep our book of shadows, because and make sure to document these interactions and feelings, because that might be the seed that was planted now, but 3 years from now, that's when it'll be revealed, or from your past. It's so vast and intricate, and yes, it's so nice to talk with fellow witches that have that same interaction and understanding, like so many of us do. And that's why to the fellow listeners, again, like, reach out to those who you know you can communicate with, and just keep building that trust inside yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Doubt has as much toxicity as fear.
Yes.
And that's what building that is. To go back to, yes, speaking without speaking, I'll share, that's one of my secrets too when we're speaking with spirits and interact. Secrets. And why sometimes people are like, well, I did all the same things, Megan. Why didn't the spirit commune with me on the spirit box? Because when I'm speaking my question, I'm also thinking it and sending it out that way.
Yes.
But you have to think, they're limited by what the spirit box can do. It's a cool tool to use, but if they were able to speak through sentences and conversation, they would do it through that. I think it's picking up on that energy and that intent from them, but you're the biggest receiver and the most sensitive receiver. So those messages that you know aren't your own, that knowing that you can question it and you can wonder and work with it. But like you said, the doubt, doubting whether it's like that you're not good enough or that it wouldn't happen to you. Like, it's hard, but work on ignoring that.
Exactly.
Because that's the only way to grow. And that's like, I mean, there's times where I still don't feel like, oh, there's just all this stuff. Like, there's no way that I know it. But then it comes and you just have to be kind of resolute with your process and what's been given to you. And sometimes that'll come through on a connect. Sometimes it'll come through on a spirit box. But either it's dreams or all that stuff. But that's how things communicate. And if our first episode was about spirits and working with them, I think this one is not only about you and like what you do, but communication is like the big theme, I think, of kind of what was unspoken on why too we wanted to talk about what we wanted to talk about is why it's important to communicate, and then how you can better receive this stuff, because the more people that are listening and in harmony, the better for everything and everybody. So yeah, listen to this and then go out and just sit and listen. Or it's cold right now in some places, so but also you can do that too. Just wear a coat,
right?
And then like listen, because things might have been wanting to get your attention, and you're allowing them that help, and build the energy work like you said, and do all this. Find rituals, and if you find a cool one and you want to tweak it, like that recipe, like do that, because you know best on what's going to work for you, and things will let you know.
And not only that, but I want to touch back on something you said, putting on a coat. What some of my best work has been done when I am uncomfortable. And it's not only just with energy, but also, the things around me. There's a rock that's under my ass, or there's, it's really, really fucking cold or really, really fucking hot. Those things sort of, when you start doing the work, those things fall away.
Right.
It's almost like that too, but that it's that discomfort, like the freezing. It's so primal, because you think it's like you're tapping into something where it's like we have the luxury where we are of having heat and AC and being able to like put on a coat. But think of how hard it was for those in the early day. It's like you're tapping into that raw energy of it's cold. That is built, like that emotion and that discomfort is also going into my intent.
Yes. Yeah. That brings me to, I will share with one of the rites I did years and years ago. And it's almost like, yes, it's strengthening that muscle. It's that training. Even Buddhist monks have different techniques that help them meditate and stuff like that. And that's why I think this one mainly is to help you overcome that doubt and fear. And this rite that I did years ago, and you can find it in Jim McGarry's The 13 Ways of, like, the old one, or sorry, I'm butchering that title, but
we'll put a link to it in
the
make sure you get it right, because we'll link it,
because this is not a book that I've read. So
really?
No.
Oh my gosh,
it's
this up in my altar right now. I'm gonna get it for you at the end of this.
You guys, I'm gonna go get it.
You guys, let me tell you. So I did this in how old was I? So I did part of this ritual before I ever read this from Gemma. I was 14, 15. But the whole point of it is you have to go out into the woods or somewhere that you have that feel of spirits and interactions, and you cast your circle, and completely sky-clad, you lay in your circle, and you sit there all night.
Which means naked.
Wow. Yes, it does mean naked. Yes,
thank
you for the translation. Yeah.
So don't like do it on an anthill or
no, and that's part of the thing too. So when I did this, I was actually underneath this beautiful tree, and I was out in the woods, and the way the hill was, the mountain kind of went up, and I had this tiny little bit of a silhouette where the treetops were with the moonlight. But what happens to you is you start to build anxiety a little bit when you're like just not moving. And I heard footsteps.
Because you're naked and afraid.
Yeah. and I heard footsteps and like sticks break and I'm like, oh man. And also safely, like, tell people where you are, like, you know what I mean, like, be smart, my friends. Be smart.
And some people might be able to just do this in their backyard.
Yeah. Take pepper spray.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Be smart about things.
Exactly. So I hear this and I'm like, and then in my head I started to play like scenarios of my worst fears, and I won't go into like what I struggled with in the past, but I would say, well, when I was young, I had beautiful interactions with Fae, and Fae are amazing, and there's some also like Pan's Labyrinth, the Pale Man kinds of Fae as well.
Yes.
So in my head, like, that's what I started to like visualize, and I was like, oh, and I almost like moved, but I was like, no, I worked through that and I built those muscles of how to calm down. And on the silhouette of the edge, I see this stag. It was a deer, and it was beautiful. And I was like, okay, see, that was building anxieties in my head. And what that lesson taught me is, you know, sometimes we manifest things inside of our heads and dwell on our fears, and that's not necessarily what it is. And you can learn to strengthen that muscle to breathe, calm down. And afterwards, like when, you know, I started to see like dawn rise and everything, I had that realization, oh, I have that strength inside myself.
Yeah.
I took off my training wheels. Oh, I can ride that bike. I can do that. Okay. And you can find different techniques and ways to do that. Like, there's even sayings like, do something that makes you uncomfortable each day with wisdom. Disclaimer.
Yes.
Like, but that helps you grow as a person.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite rituals I've ever done is, it was the winter solstice, and this was back when I was, you know, about 14, 15, and I had some other girls who, you know, practiced with me, and it was something we all did together. And it was the winter solstice, and her parents were not home, so we were able to actually go out in the backyard and do things, because we're in the South. People frown upon that. So because the parents aren't home, they're at a Christmas party, we're able to go outside. So we actually anointed, we basically stripped down to almost nothing and went outside on the winter solstice and anointed ourselves with oil and did the most ecstatic dance and celebrated that way. And it's one of my favorite ways that I've celebrated. And ecstatic dance, even if I'm just by myself, is still a way of just processing and knowing. And, you know, it's so beautiful.
It is. And it also is valid because just like with drumming, what dance does is it amplifies that energy.
Yes.
So there's even new tech out there that, like, there's machines that do that in the paranormal community. And this is stuff that people have been doing all along. There's been a few episodes where you'll hear me use my magic voice, which is like, oh, you find that tone, and what you're doing is creating vibrations, and it's exactly doing what we were saying before, is extending that energy. That's what dance is. You're amplifying that. You're in devotion. You're letting that channel through you in admiration.
But it's almost like, to bring it back to like what you just said, I mean, with like the chants and stuff that monks and other traditions might do, like, it's that knowing, and there's different ways to do it.
Yeah, and it's all connected. We're all arguing and agreeing about the same thing.
Exactly. So one's like ritual music might involve different instruments. It's still tapping in and still doing the same thing, whether it's a drum, whether it's shells, whether it's, you know, just pounding your feet against dirt. And so your witch language sounds a lot like a mantra or something that, and they're like chanting there's a couple of the, what do you call them? Like with Hecate in the Greek, like magic.
The hymns, the Orphic hymns.
Well, not just those, but they're like the, I don't know. They're called a few different things, like the Ephesian letters or something like that.
The Eleusinian mysteries, or are you thinking? I'm trying to pick up what you're putting down. I'm just
like is it Thebian? Like what?
all of these sound right.
Okay.
But it's
All
like
of the
using
above,
those,
yes.
it's like using those words and stuff. They were used in her curses and other things. And they don't know like necessarily the true meaning of what each one's
okay.
is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But they know that it's a tribute to her. And so
Mhm.
like I've chanted it, my familiars chanted it, like, and it builds that, it almost sets the tone. And like I said, it's something around those lines, and that's just, I might not even leave this in. I'm just saying, like, to go back to that, like, it's intuition, but it's also like you said, a vibration, and it's going back again to the conduit part. You're doing different things on different layers to like even burying yourself to sink into what's around you, and not just be this, I'm going to come in here and do this, and this, and things are going to listen to me. I'm going to become a part of it.
Right.
And then we can have a conversation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Be formal. Give respect. Put that work in. Do the heavy lifting that you need to before. Learn the things you need to learn. And it's okay to not understand going in,
Right.
but to know that, okay, I need to learn. And open myself up to understanding.
Then you will learn.
I give all of this. I give these gifts. I have made the gift of my time and efforts in the past workings that you have done. It's I give, not give me.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is my best advice.
That doesn't work with people.
No.
That doesn't work with Santa.
No.
Yeah.
That's what we said. Don't treat it like Santa Jesus.
Yes.
Where it's, help me find a parking spot. Give me the coolest toy. Like, it is, and we had just said it, was it before or after Cricket came in, when we were setting up to record, was I give, and like you said too, we give way more than we ever ask or
Right.
take.
Definitely.
And in turn,
And I think we talked about that on one of the
Yes,
Heptasia episodes
we did.
too.
Yes.
and I think it was the second one,
Yeah. Mhm.
because it's almost like if you give and you do the service, you won't need to ask, because it's given. Things are given and shown to you.
Exactly, my friend. Yeah. And because your network of your family, that's how I feel about it with the others. Your family knows what's coming on, and they're looking out for you in ways that you don't even see.
Yeah.
And they are like doing things, and I sometimes visualize intent and magic, like being in a dark room and all of these webs of red thread all around you. And sometimes they'll yank on the thread that needs to, and you feel it almost like a spider's web, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm picking up that. And through those reactions and that understanding, with your eyes closed, you'll be able to reach out and pull that thread and do that working subconsciously to help those ripples fall in line. So no, it's not give me. You're just this interworking of threads, and they are there to protect you and love you and set things in motion that you don't even know that's happening. You don't have to ask for it.
Yeah.
Right. You're not like the spider in the center. You're not going around and around checking everything. You're just allowing it to either come or feel, and then you can pinpoint what needs to be done, what you want to seek, what you want to find.
Right.
So I think that's a good analogy. We live in analogies, because you're trying to give descriptions to stuff that's not tangible.
Yeah. It's not corporeal. It's not concrete. It's your own gnosis. I mean, it's great to have those visual representations so that we can sort of convey that same point.
Yeah.
Because somebody may not describe it that way at first, but once you explain it, they're like, oh yeah, and I see it this way. And
Or just maybe that tiny little block.
yeah.
And like saying you feel like you're in a spider web, it's like, that's it. That's what I needed to feel, because I kept pushing and pushing, but I just need to let it come.
Yeah.
And my understanding too, like when I'm speaking to other witches and they're asking me for advice, like you have to understand pouring your magic and your intent. Imagination is that strong tool. You have to visualize that in your mind to focus that intent and to channel that magic. So you do
However you need to.
Right. So visualization and your imagination as well. Like ritual sometimes is like these are your props to help amp you up, cheer yourself up, and it's a proclamation sometimes to who you're working with. They're your witness, and you're saying, I shall do this thing because I am the biggest tool that is given to myself, just like you said, Cricket. And I proclaim that I shall use myself and sharpen myself to use it to do this. And then so say I, and they all around you are like, and they back you up and they cheer you on.
Yeah.
And that strong visualization. So that analogy might be a gift to help somebody focus.
Right. Mm-hmm. Picture yourself in a web of red thread, because I'm going to do that next time. But but like I said, the tools have a place, but don't think that they're necessary.
Exactly.
Because when you grab that dagger or athame, you visualize piercing or cutting away or opening the veil. Your automatic, I guess, brain, like what you've grown to know is knives are sharp and they cut. But you can use your hand, you can use your mind to do the same thing. Yes. So the tool has its place, especially if you're charging them and making them sacred. A wand is a focal point to send out. You can use your finger. You can use like anything. So the tools are there, but imagination, like when we first started out on the path, one of the first things to do when you meditate is to try to visualize 3-dimensional shapes. You start flat and then you add and you change their colors. You see them move around, and that's that imagination that's working with, and that's what these spirits and entities and things like that are going to use, because whether it's physical animals like we talked about that are personal to you, like owls for Hecate, things like that, and it's similar to scrying and meditation, where if a black cat shows up and it's related to something and it keeps showing up, then you attribute that black cat to mean this message. Somebody else, it means something completely different. But that imagination, that visualization is what they're going to use. It's what you're going to use. That's that's the language.
Exactly.
So I think that's why kids are so in tune too. Nobody's told them that they're fucking wrong yet. Nobody's told them their imagination sucks or reality sucks. Like they're just, they experience it on a whole different level and call it the brain waves that change when you get to a certain age too. But what you're trying to do is tap back into that.
Well, I think a lot of it gets beaten out of us too.
For sure.
You know? And I was definitely that way. I was a very imaginative kid and would find myself, lost in thought and daydream, and I would draw
all the time.
And write and read all the time, and it was this beautiful cycle that just kept coming and coming and coming, and I feel like I've almost been severed from that because of some of the trauma that I've experienced from my parents.
Yeah.
Because that they've tried to discourage that for me because they thought that I was too lost in daydream and thought and not grounded enough in reality. So,
but you also make your own reality.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you guys remember the film Return to Oz?
Did I ever see? I don't know if I ever seen it.
Those old school people out there. It's so well done. It's young Farouja Balk, and the film starts out. It's Dorothy, and her family is sick and tired of her talking about Oz.
Right. Shut up.
Yeah. And so it was actually really dark. A lot of the film was like, they take her to a place for electroshock therapy.
Oh, gosh.
To help her sleep better at night, to burn all of that out and to anchor her more in the real world. And I think that's a good analogy of like, on the extreme, of what does happen to us. And we were talking before, Bones, about the balance with the veil of the living world and then the realm where the others are. And witches, we have like a foot in each realm, and then we can put that work in going back and forth. And don't feel bad, that happened to me too. I lost my sight a lot when I was little. Like I used to see a lot more clearly, and now you'll hear me say I'm like a bat. So I can like feel all these things, or I'm like the spider. The feelings I have are really strong, but I'm still learning and focusing on getting my full HD sight back.
Right.
And that's what Rob, he has really good, clear sight and visions as a medium and everything like that. So we, like, when you're talking about working in a group, and finding that like great teamwork. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, that is important. So I'm right there with you. And that happens to a lot of us,
Yeah.
and sometimes without us even knowing.
Mhm.
And that's why it's important to put that work back in and to know thyself.
Yes.
You need to know thyself and the foundations that need extra work and
Mhm.
refortifying,
Mhm.
and to know that structure of what door to open that
Mhm.
needs to be opened.
Yeah.
That's so important.
And I mean, I think we've just literally, because I was going to say, well, getting to the end of the episode, is there anything that you would like to convey or tell people, either hoping to do this, already doing it, how to further connect or, grow their either communication or their craft? And I think, for one, we've answered quite a few things because you just talked about what you would suggest or take this away. Is there anything else that you feel that you...
I would say constantly reach out for knowledge in different ways. I can full-heartedly recommend Troy books.
Mhm.
All of their books, I feel, are just fabulous. Like, there's a lot of traditional witchcraft in there. You can find lots of Jim McGarry, who is very dear to my heart.
Mhm.
So I would say that's a good place if somebody's like, I want more than a 101 book.
Right.
Yes.
I want
Something a little bit more
meatier.
advanced, yeah.
Mhm.
I would say that's a good place to start. Start a book of shadows or
Yeah.
just a journal. And like,
If you
try
know
and
witches,
remember, yeah.
They have bottles, journals.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
I have a bunch of blank ones that I have attributed to certain things, and I need to
Yes.
write in them. But
Yes.
yeah,
My family, we always said too, because I know a lot of people when I'm talking to them about dream work, they're like, I forget it like really easily.
Oh, God.
Oh, I have a separate book where I
Yes.
catalog everything, and I think
Yeah.
I've shown you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nowadays with all of technology and stuff, just as soon as you wake up, still
Oh,
grumpy.
put it in your phone.
Yeah, put it in your phone. Just voice record
memo.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
because you will literally forget
Mhm.
Yeah.
the minute you do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Stay in that sort of, I've almost had it.
Half awake.
Yeah, that almost caveman state
Mhm.
where you're in between.
Yeah.
You know, that is the best place to be as a witch anyway.
Yes.
Savor that feeling.
Mhm.
And I think that when you're a newbie, you either really, really, really love that state and you seek it out all the time, especially with, the psychotropics and things that are relaxing, like, marijuana or things like that. Or you're afraid of that space.
Exactly.
And it's somebody goes to either one or the other. And I am just now getting over the trauma that I had to where I am sort of starting to enjoy that space and linger in that space more, because I didn't really know what I was doing for a long time, and there weren't a lot of people who could verbalize and help teach me, because there were a lot of people who relied on the Witchcraft 101 books, and that's all they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I knew. So the fact that, and that's one of the reasons that I want to do this, is because I want to make this accessible to everyone. Because I didn't have it for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're learning on the, like, every step we do, we are learning something.
Oh my God,
yeah.
And that's like the nature of the witch, is to constantly, and the occult is just to look and learn. And we had said too, unfortunately, you can't spend all of your time on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But to have that healthy balance, you have to find that balance of, don't be so naive that everything just comes in, or you believe everything.
Right.
Don't be closed off. Don't shirk your other responsibilities. So there's a balance, and you walk on both sides.
Right.
And it gets easier and easier as you do it. It's just like talking to friends.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
yeah. So that's, again, this is like almost like a spirits part 2, when we're urging you to like communicate with these things, even if it's just the small little energies you feel in your house. They could be little goblins or whatever. Or if you want to,
cute. We had one at Greystone, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was adorable. He was so grumpy. He was cute.
No.
He was like, we caught the growl and stuff on audio as well.
Nice.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's cool.
So again, they're not all human.
Yeah.
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 Look for those too.
Mm-hmm. And we gave him respect and stuff too. But yeah, the advice I would say, focus on your intent, trust in your instincts, trust yourself, and work on fortifying yourself, because that is the first tool you have in investigation and just...
In, like, life.
Yeah, exactly. And just take that first step. Try to not do it in fear. Know thyself is what I would say. And that comes from knowledge, practice, putting the work in.
Yeah. And don't think hunting. Think investigating, exploration, adventuring. Like, that's how we see it. It's like we're making friends. And putting yourself out there to do the service that little things you can do. So
and to understand, which is one of the reasons I use the term investigator.
Yes,
because I understand.
Yeah,
like you would with another culture.
Yeah,
which is important. Don't be closed-minded and judgmental.
Exactly.
Don't be a dick.
Because that's when you're gonna get your cabinets broken.
Yeah.
When you're being rude. And there's so many stories from around the world of, putting up that ancestral altar and just giving respect to those spirits. They don't have problems like some people have when they're just trying to bleach everything, clean the house. Like, that's when that stuff, just make a little altar or a spirit jar and be friendly. It goes such a long way, and that practice, again, in real life, goes such a long way.
It does. Like, you made us coffee, and you've got us biscuits, digestives from London.
Yes.
And see, and now it's like we feel like we're welcome here. It's not just all the cool shit you have in here. But yeah, so with that being said, you've got a cool story for us, or a couple? To come up for the Patreon?
Yes.
So if you liked hearing from Megan, like we always do, where can they find you?
So you can find me on so many different places now. The show itself, you can even find on Amazon Prime. And we are also on the Roku Spirit channel. So we have many seasons on there. On Amazon Prime, we have our latest season with more episodes coming out. And we're on YouTube, theghostfinders.com. You can find us on Facebook. I have my Megan Deputy, co-host of the Ghost Finders Facebook, the Ghost Finders channel on Instagram. And I'm super laid back. You can even just find me on Megan Deputy on Instagram. There's been a lot of fans that have reached out to me, and I've messaged them back. One even was like, it's Samhain! How did you message me back on Samhain? Like, did you took the time to do that? I'm like, yes.
You summoned me.
Yeah, I was like, yes, this is like... Treat others the way you want to be treated.
We do the same way. We try.
Yeah.
We try to get to everybody as quick as possible with as much, because people ask us questions, and we're not just going to be passive. Like, if we have to look up something, we'll get back to you. But so you're easy to find.
Yeah, ask me anything.
The show sounds easy to find.
Yes.
And you've got a new season dropping soon with some really cool shit.
Oh, man.
We can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it, but...
Won't talk about it.
Ooh, the intent
but be looking for it.
Is out there, and I'm so excited. One of the places, I have the plane ticket in my hand, my friends. I am so excited for our next investigation. I cannot wait. Yes.
All right. So you guys be looking for that. I know we will.
Definitely.
And so, again, you can follow us, if you don't already, on Instagram. Not on Facebook. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. If there's enough call for a Facebook page, we'll do it.
Yeah. No trolls. Unless it's real trolls and actual goblins and shit. You guys are welcome.
Yes.
But yeah, you can find us on Apple Podcast, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, all of them. Most of them. But yeah, go look for us there. And then we have a Patreon, which we're making staying for the extra stories. We love having those stories. Today, this won't come out today, but today is Patron Thank You Day. That's what Patreon told us. But we thank you every day, and we love you every day. So you guys are the greatest. We still can't believe you want to give us your money every month. Like, really? We appreciate you. Yeah. It means a lot. So if you are a patron, head over there. Check out Megan's stories. And until next time, bye.
Bye.
We never know how to start, and we never know how to end. But that's okay, because it's just one long conversation.
We like the in-between anyway.
Yes, that's where we reside.
Yeah.
Cursed is a bi-weekly podcast produced by Bones McWilliams and Cricket Word. The theme for Curse is Voice of the Trees by Sun and Moon Dance. Check them out on Spotify, YouTube, or at sunandmoondance.bandcamp.com. Follow Curse on Instagram, Twitter, and become a patron at patreon.com/cursecast.
We had to get a cat meowing.
Yeah. Come here, Jazz.
Come on, Giles.